Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming at you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central this evening with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Yes, we're doing it again. We got a new story up for you tonight. Get ready, hold on to your seats because we are moving from the arena of the imagined to the realm of reality with a brand new story from a whole nother genre coming right out of the annals of American history with the story Unspeakable, the Tulsa Race Massacre. Yes, they've made it into a children's book. Unbelievable as that may be, it's a fact. And we're going to be reading from it tonight. It's got wonderful artwork in it. You're not going to see the artwork, but we do have plenty of images, real live images from the actual incident itself, the Tulsa Race Massacre. So get ready. Before we go there, a few things we need to do. Number one, go ahead and give us a subscription. Go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. If you're watching on YouTube, more than likely you're probably not, because then that means you'd be watching at a later time. So if you're watching on Facebook, give us a like if you don't mind. We really appreciate that. And in the meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight with our words of wisdom for the evening. From the island of Jamaica, we have these words of wisdom for you. Pick up on what I'm putting down. Old fire tick easy for catch. Old fire tick easy for catch. So a fire tick is a fire stick. In other words, it's easier to catch an old fire stick that's already been burnt previously and put out than it is to catch a new one. That's similar to a saying we have that you may be more familiar with. Don't burn your bridges after you cross them, because you might just want to cross back over that bridge again later. Meanwhile, we're adding a new element tonight. We're going to be reading some poems from Miss Lou. Miss Lou's selected poems. Let's see what Miss Lou has to offer you tonight. Now, we're going to be working with these poems, and we're picking them like we're reading this book like we read the Bible. We just open it up and see what we see, and we read what we read. So we're doing this all unrehearsed through the universe. So if it sounds a little bit rough, that's only because it may be just a little bit rough, but we feel it'll be a little bit tough if we do it a little bit rough. So this one is called Here So. Shut up your mouth, you liar you. Stop scandal people name. You hear so? Follow here so. Shut your mouth, you should have shame. The same somebody you hear so from will spread here so upon you, and them there will hear so about. We hear so about you too. Hear so, hear say, sue, sue. All of them rumor way down fly. Spring from grudgefulness and malice. 10 to 1 chance them is lie. And lie is not a good something. Lie, talawa, and vile. And if you help for tell the lie, is you it going to file. So put down dirty rumor, put down say, stop sue, sue, no smear innocent somebody name, for cuss will follow you. Wow, that was deep. Let me just put a mark by that one, that I read that one. Here so. And that is selected poetry of Miss Lou. Go on, Miss Lou. Miss Lou, she a bad so-and-so. Miss Lou don't be playing, boy. She be coming straight with the real. Coming with the real. Okay. Now, the thing about Miss Lou's poetry, just in case you're not familiar with Miss Lou is the poet laureate of the island of Jamaica, even though laureate, I guess, emeritus, or the former poet laureate, because she's now moved on to the land of the ancestors. But we still have her poetry, and we can still read it from time to time, and we can read some Jamaican rhyme. Well, the thing about Miss Lou, what Miss Lou is really known for is not just speaking patois or Creole or in the Jamaican dialect, but she's known for telling the stories of the people the way the people tell the stories. She's known for taking what conversations that she might have heard on a bus, a train, a plane, some kind of lorry. Okay, one of those what do you call those transport buses? Those little short transport buses with that are very colorful, look like something from the islands, because that's exactly where they're from. She's good for taking that language, those thoughts from the minds and the hearts of the people, and writing them down on paper and sharing them with the world. And so that's what we're sharing with you. But tonight, our story is from none other than Carol Boston Weatherford and Floyd Cooper. And they tell the story of Unspeakable, the Tulsa Race Massacre. And let me see, was there something on the back? I know I read something, a little something about this book. Oh, wow. Looks like I got a little bit of something on the back there. Okay. Let's see what I got here. Okay. Maybe it was in the beginning. Let's see how this book starts off. All right. Like I said, this book has a lot of... here we go. We're going to read this little part here on the leaf, on the inside, the front inside of the book. In the early 1900s, Tulsa, Oklahoma was home to a thriving African American community, the Greenwood District. The Greenwood District had its own school. It had its own school system, libraries, churches, restaurants, post office, movie theaters, and more. But all that would change in the course of 2 terrible, unspeakable days. Now, did this just happen in one place? No, it happened in many places. All places that were very similar to this place. So this story is a cautionary tale because it wasn't just an isolated incident. On May 31st and June 1st, 1921, a mob of armed white Tulsans attacked Greenwood. They looted homes and businesses and burned them to the ground as black families fled. The police did nothing to protect Greenwood, and as many as 300 African Americans were killed. More than 8,000 were left homeless. News of the Tulsa Race Massacre, one of the worst incidents of racial violence in U.S. history, was largely suppressed, and no official investigation occurred for 75 years. 75 years. So the authors want young people to understand the events of the past so we can move forward to a better future for everyone. Because without understanding the past, it's hard to understand people's misgivings about things. Like, for instance, the whole COVID vaccine thing. People want us to take the vaccine, but in my neighborhood, the local hospital was known officially as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital. But in the hood, in Compton, California, We called that same hospital Killer King. Now, would you go to Killer King to get saved? Think about it. The only reason you go to Killer King is because you just about got killed. You don't have any choice. Somebody picked you up off the street and took you there. So, no, I will not be going to Killer King to get no vaccination. I think I will just have to take my chances. Thank you very much. And if that means that I can't go to some dances, maybe there's some dances I won't be going to. That's just the way it is. Meanwhile, let's move on with our voodoo hoodoo spellbook story for the night. Once upon a time near Tulsa, Oklahoma, prospectors struck it rich in the oil fields. They struck it rich. The wealth created jobs. It raised buildings and attracted newcomers from far and wide, seeking fortune and a fresh start. Once upon a time in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a community called Greenwood. Its residents descended from black Indians, from formerly enslaved people, and from exodusters who moved west in the late 1800s, fleeing the violence and racism of the segregated South. Once upon a time in Greenwood, there were some 10,000 people living in a 35 square block area. Train tracks divided the black and white communities from each other. Segregation laws called for separate neighborhoods, schools, phone booths, and railroad, streetcar coaches, etc., to all be segregated. Unfair tests made it hard for blacks to register to vote, and laws barred marriages across racial lines. So many black businesses cropped up along a 1-mile stretch of Greenwood Avenue that educator and business leader Booker T. Washington called the area the Negro Wall Street of America. The name later became Black Wall Street, and the community kept on thriving. They weren't jiving. Once upon a time on Black Wall Street, there were dozens of restaurants and grocery stores. There were furriers, a pool hall, a bus system, and an auto shop. Nearly 200 businesses in all. There were also several libraries, a hospital, a post office, and a separate school system where some say black children got a better education than the white children. Is that so? There were 2 black-owned newspapers, the Tulsa Star and Oklahoma Sun, and over 20 churches and 15 black daughters, including Dr. A.C. Jackson, the most able black surgeon in the nation. Do you understand what I'm saying yet? On Detroit Avenue stood grand homes of doctors, lawyers, and prominent businessmen. Once upon a time in Greenwood, there were barbershops and beauty salons. Miss Mabel's Little Rose Beauty Salon boomed on Thursdays when the maids who worked for the white families got coughed on their day off and strutted in style up and down Greenwood Avenue. The soda fountain at Williams Confectionery was the backdrop for scores of marriage proposals. And there was the luxurious Stratford Hotel, then the largest black-owned hotel in the nation. Black guests were welcomed there, even as they were barred from Tulsa's white hotels. Once upon a time in Greenwood, there were 2 movie theaters, including the 800-seat black-owned Dreamland. There were even 6 privately owned airplanes. But in 1921, not everyone in Tulsa was pleased with these signs of black wealth, undeniable proof that African Americans could achieve just as much, if not more, than whites, you understand. All it took was one elevator ride. One 17-year-old white elevator operator accusing a 19-year-old black shoe sign man of assault for simmering hatred to boil over. Now, when I say boil over, I mean boil all over our neighborhood. Because this riot didn't happen in their neighborhood, it happened in ours. With the accused man in jail, the white-owned Tulsa Tribune newspaper ran a headline prompting readers to nab him, grab him, yoke him up by the neck, choke him out until, fearing the man would be lynched, killed by a mob before his trial. 30 armed black men rushed downtown to his rescue. At the jail, they faced off with 2,000 armed whites on May 31st, 1921, one day after Memorial Day. Memorial Day, that day when America celebrates patriotism, love of country, a holiday honoring fallen soldiers. Skirmishes between the two groups left 2 black men and 10 white men dead, but the worst was yet to come. Unable to get to the jailed subject, the white mob sparked rumors that the black community planned to attack. Unchecked and in some cases deputized by the police, the white mob stormed into Greenwood, looting and shooting, burning homes and businesses too that blacks had saved and sacrificed to build, threatening to shoot. The mob blocked firefighters from putting out the blazes. And that's what really amazes. African American World War I veterans took up arms to defend their families and property, but they were outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, out-aeroplaned, and out-bombed. Families fled with only what they could carry. Once upon a time in Greenwood, up to 300 black people, including Dr. Jackson, were killed. Hundreds more were injured. More than 8,000 people were left homeless, and hundreds of businesses and other establishments were reduced to ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's enough to make you want to cuss. The police did nothing to protect the black community. When the National Guard arrived the next day, all that was left to do was put out fires and move thousands of black residents into camps outside of Tulsa as their community lay in ruins. Black residents had to carry passes to enter the city. It's 9:30. And if that sounds a lot like South Africa to you, well, maybe it was. If you recall, South Africa used to be, the initials for South Africa used to be the USA. Ain't that a kick in the shins? In the days and weeks that followed, some black Tulsans left and never returned. Others stayed and rebuilt the Greenwood community, only to witness its purposeful decline in the 1960s. Because then it wasn't about a race riot, then it was about urban removal. They called it urban renewal, but we all knew it down in the hood as urban removal because they renovated, excavated, and evacuated members of the community until the community didn't exist. For decades, survivors did not speak of those terrible days. For decades, people did not speak of those terrible ways. For decades, people did not speak, for it was an unspeakable time, an unspeakable crime, something that nobody wanted to remember. But we're here today to remember that 75 years passed before lawmakers launched an investigation to uncover the painful truth about the worst racial attack in United States history. Police and city officials had plotted with the white mob to destroy the nation's wealthiest black community. Today, Tulsa's Reconciliation Park remembers victims of the 1921 massacre and recalls the role of African Americans in Oklahoma history. But the park is not just a bronze monument to the past, it's a place to realize the responsibility we all have to reject hatred and violence and to instead choose hope. Well, I hope that we have more than just hope, because I don't know if there's enough hope to be able to cope with another situation like that seems to be brewing and stewing in the pots of America, along with the chicken stew. The question now is, are they coming for you? And that's why this is a scary story. So much for our scary story for tonight. We don't even want to muddy those waters with anything else. We want to leave out on that note right there and let you just think about it. If you need to look it up, Google it. If you need to get further information, go to Wikipedia and look at the references. Find yourself a book, a movie, go to YouTube and type in Green or Tulsa, type in Tulsa race riot, Tulsa massacre, and then you can see what I see. That there are more scary stories in the world that are real than there are imagined. We're here to tell both kinds. And in the meanwhile, we're going to just give a shout out to New Orleans, Nicholas Orleans Riglet, and Mwatabo Okanta. And is there anybody else? I don't see anybody else out there. All right. Thank y'all very much for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and sign off here, but we will be back tomorrow with more from the book we've been reading from, The Fences Between, by Norma Marceray, about Black life in Northeast Ohio. Back in the 20s, the life of a young African-American woman in Northeast Ohio in the 20s, particularly right here in Kent, Canton, and Akron. So all the neighborhoods right around this area. So all of what she has to say and tell us about really does strike a resonant chord. So we hope you'll be joining us tomorrow at noon. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9, signing off. Peace out, y'all. If you want to see this same presentation with the slideshow, then you'll have to see it on YouTube, and I'll be posting it up there shortly. I'm not live streaming it on YouTube right now because I'm finding that I may have to do it another way in order to get better resolution and no buffering, because I know buffering is a pain. All right. In the meanwhile, go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel if you haven't already. Peace out without a doubt. We'll be black tomorrow afternoon, and we'll see y'all then.